I'll fix it next time. I'll look for it, thank you. Well, I'll take it. Preferences reserved. It's a schedule old class. Now, whenever you want to go, I'll choose something to pull up. Yeah, but it's not gonna show on the screens, right? We just got an offer and they also sent a selling commission change agreement. That's so cool. Requesting more. That's so cool. And then you say, no. Nice. I've never seen that before. It's pretty aggressive. I mean, I had asked the realtor, but she's not automatically doing it. That's pretty bold. You say, I am so impressed by that form that you sent.
Oh, no, we don't need to. You want us to? No, it's not that we don't.
I would tell that age, I'm so impressed by that form. He said, that's the coolest thing, but no.
I had to take that back real quick. What? 300, but then. It didn't come with.
Are we ready?
Yes.
So that's gonna be hiding behind it or? All right. I may not need it, but I need a PowerPoint more. Oh, it's the right. Shopping. Right, you should be good. We're good. Right, let's get started. How was yesterday's song? Let's get started. This is it, 6, 7 people. Wow.
Oh, let me go get,
You're missing out.
yeah, she told me to go get.
Fear of missing out.
What's this in here? This is so weird.
There's the first screen. Oh, what's the first screen? Okay. Really? Join messed up. Where is the little screen for PowerPoint? This is PowerPoint, right? Yeah, but where's the, you know how I would show the little thing down there? So I like notes? No. For you. You. Slideshow. Where's the little slideshow thing? Oh, the little icons on there. That's it. That's it. Oh, the Zoom was covering it. Yeah. That's funny. No, it's okay. Yeah. I'm in trouble again. Now where did you? Oh, it's fine. All right. So this class is first of all, it is an investor class, but it's for residential income, right? So that's what residential income is what? One, less than 4 units, because one is, I was thinking it was 1. Yeah. So in the MLS, when you look up properties, if you select option 1, when you do your search, it's residential. If you pick option 2, it's residential income. So that's where these will be found. A lot of times, and because we're going through a shift, when we head towards a buyer's market, because the last market was a seller's market and you couldn't negotiate with the seller, when you're heading to a buyer's market, that's when you start seeing the deals. That's when the investors come crawling out of the woodwork. And the only thing, typically, an investor, this is the oddest thing, this is the way, I don't know if Zoomies can see me or not. What investors, it's one of the odd things about investors, they usually have an agent that they always work with. Right? So like when I was selling, during the recession, because it was foreclosures, I had a lot of investors that only wanted to work with me. Because it was foreclosures, everybody was making money. I mean, they were buying condos for $30,000 with their American Express card. Because they could pay it off right away, right? So it was crazy. So what they do is they'll have an agent that they always work with. I have one investor who's a guy who puts braces on, orthodontist. He'll call everyone in my office to go looking at properties. He will call every agent in my office. His name was Dr. Padre. Everyone knew Dr. Padre. And he always found a new agent. And so he was brilliant. So they all knew him. And then he would have you guys go look at properties. Go check this out for me. Tell me what you think. And y'all will go running all over the county. There you go with you. And he called me up and told me what to write up. So that's what investors do. They're using you to get to the MLS. That's what they do. Until you have a good relationship with one who trusts you, if you don't speak the same language as them, they're using you. Johnny knows this. So they don't see, when you send MLSs, you're sending them pretty pictures. They don't care about the pictures. They couldn't care less. But that's what agents send them. So they're using you to go out there and take the time, because they don't want to waste my time. Oh, Dolores, I would never waste your time going to look for properties. I got agents to do that. I'm in the office listening to them talk to him. So I knew, I'm like, dude, would you stop doing that? But that's what they do. And I had about 7 or 8 like that. I had a family, they were using American Express. I mean, it was like the best time. But what I'm saying to you is, you need to add value to the transaction, because if all you're going to do is send them pictures of MLSs, they know you're new. They know you're not an investor's agent. They're going to go to somebody else to get the numbers to make sure that the numbers work. They're going to use you because you're free and easy. So you really have to vet out your investors. So you have to know the difference between the investors, and you have to know the map that they're looking for. Once you're rolling off the map, they're good with it. Did you need me? Okay, so once you start rolling off their language, they're good. Now here's the other problem of working with investors. The agents that list the properties don't know what they're doing. That's another thing. So in the residential income thing, they'll put in there a cap rate. How'd you get the cap rate? Well, I do it this way, and I do it that way, and I do it that way. So when you're comparing them, they're apples and apples. You can't take what the agent puts in, because the agent doesn't know the math. They probably got the cap rate from the owner. Now, is the owner going to raise the cap rate or lower the cap rate? So, yeah, they're going to raise it because they want someone to buy it. I mean, it's such a joke. So you really have to understand the math so you speak the same language, and you have to differentiate yourself between the different investors. And you have to know what it is that they're looking for. They're all different. So you really have to list your investor. That's the whole thing. You really have to vet them out. If they're brand new, you're going to be teaching them. And if they're seasoned, you're still going to be teaching them, because you're going to add the value to the transaction. So you have to know who they are. They all call up and they'll say something like, I had a walk-in on Tuesday. And the guy's like, I think he brought it in. The guy's like, I'm looking to lease a bay of about 1,000 square feet. Well, what are you going to do? I'm going to open up an ice cream shop. Oh, have you done it before? Nope. Now, you can't just rent and lease a bay with a Publix anchor if you have no collateral or any history of the business they're going to be in, because they want to see a proven performance, right? They want to know that you already did that. And so we're talking. It's the first time he's ever done this. His brothers have a few businesses. He's a pharmacist. So he's going to try this out. He's got the money. He's got lots of cash laying around. But there was like an interview of about 30 minutes. I'm like, this guy hasn't got a clue. I gotta start all over. So that was kind of cool, having someone just walk in and say, I want to get a bay in the public shopping center. Then I'm like, well, that shopping center doesn't have any bays, but the Walmart does. So, but then the more I peeled back that onion, the more I realized he's never done anything before with his own name on it. So we're gonna have to slow down and get he's gonna have to do a business plan and everything to be able to rent that bay. So that was kind of interesting. So you need to know who they are. Define your investor types. So we're going to talk about the different investor types. We're going to talk about the math, the holding, the cost. I lost my performance, so I borrowed Johnny and changed things. So, and then we'll talk about creative financing. So I'm going to try and cover this. I got to be out by 2:30, so I'm going to try and cover this. If we don't get it done, don't worry, because I'll do it again and I'll make sure that you all know who I am. We'll make sure that we get this done. So the different investor types are the first-time investor, the one who watches HGTV, where you can renovate a house in 45 minutes. Daydreamer. Where you buy it for 200 and you sell it for 250 until your profit's 50,000. Yeah, no, it's not the way it works. So the first-time person, just like the first-time home buyer, you want to make sure, hey, you want to make sure that that you vet them out. It's just a conversation, and it's a casual conversation. It's not like a drill or anything. You just want to know what they're interested in, you know, how you expect to do it and things like that. The flipper we'll talk about the buy and hold. My favorite is the buy and hold. I think flippers are
That's where we're in right now.
we're in a buy and hold market. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. The move up and move down, that's just someone who's selling their personal residence and then turning it into an investment property. That's you'll get more sides on that than anything else. And the season, of course, is my favorite because they know what they're doing. So the first time investor, the baby investor. Baby investor. They have a low tolerance and probably misunderstand the level of work and the time involved that's in anything, right? Because they're watching HGTV. So we really have to slow down with that person. They're typically looking for a single unit. So you got to be careful with this, because if they're looking at a condo, there's so many costs and restrictions with condos. And then to rent it out, you got to be so much more careful. So they need to understand that your vacancy rate might be longer on a condo than anything else, but there's so many holding costs on your vacancy rate as also. We'll talk about vacancy rates. Single family. The best thing for the first time investor is a single family unit in a non-HOA place, non-gated, non-HOA with little restrictions. And no pool. Be careful with the pool. So the best thing for them is no HOA, right? Because when you put a tenant in there, who gets the fines? And then, you know, it's just nothing but problems. So for the first time investor, you want to make it as smooth as possible, something small. And the really interesting thing about single family and investors, the worse the neighborhood, the better the return. The worse the neighborhood, the better the return, your income. Yeah, really interesting. So let's say I don't want to red liner, but if the neighborhood.
Let's say Tamarack. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know Tamarack that well, so we'll use Tamarack because they're old.
No, Tamarack.
Avenue.
Oh, Tamarack.
Avenue.
Yeah.
Oh, I know Tamarack. Okay. So, oh, there's a nice quad there. I saw the quad there. It was two bedroom, 1 bath, and 1 3-bedroom, 2 bath. So the 3-bedroom was in the back, and the other one's a small building, and it was on a dead end street with the railroad, right? I don't remember what street it was, but had a lot of parking, all CVS. The girl inherited it from her grandmother. We sold it for $125,000 6 years ago. $125,000. Each unit was bringing in the 3-bedroom brought out in $1,500 a month, And the other two brought in 1,000 a month, so they're making 3,000, 4,500 a month, and they need
Wow.
125,000 for it.
Wow.
It is a cash, now that was 6, 7 years ago, probably way more. And they put a huge investment in at the beginning, because they had to, you can imagine, it's just a fridge and a stove and a kitchen, right? There's not much in there, there's no microwave. So he redid the kitchen, but he redid it with granite and he put tile throughout the house, so he wouldn't have to replace the carpet. That you can't break granite, can't even burn it, so the initial investment, and they're not big kitchens, I mean, each one was like 900 square feet, except the big one was 1,200 square feet. So the guy put in about maybe $10,000, maybe. Yeah, cash cow. Worst neighborhood, and you get the highest return. Which
Why is
is,
that?
Why isn't that why?
well, why is it? I mean, when you buy on the low,
Yeah.
so you're gonna put in as little as possible in the beginning, but your rents are gonna be the same as everywhere else. You just wanna make sure you have the nicest house in the worst neighborhood to get the highest rent in that neighborhood, right? So you make that house the nicest, so you don't have to replace a carpet, you have to replace every time 6 months of a tenant, you gotta replace carpet, right? So he put in white tile and granite counters, and you won't have to replace them. Yeah. So that was really smart, you have to do much of the bathroom. But so that's an example of buy low, worst neighborhood, highest return. Yeah, so that was a good one for them. Homeowner association, condo associations, you gotta be careful with their restrictions, especially with rentals and taking care of the lawn and everything else. So with single families, you've also got to make sure that the lawn is taken care of, and don't put an investor in a place with a pool. The only time you'll see an investment property with a pool is like, if I own the house, I don't want to sell it, I want to turn it into an investment property, my house has a pool. That's the only time you'll see it. Because it's such a high liability, right? You know, if something happens to it.
Kid drowned, they're not going after the tenant, they're going after the owner.
Yeah, because they only insure the inside, so. But you also get a different type of family and stuff like that. But the first time investor, there is a lot of conversation going on, because you want to make sure that they understand this, so that they understand what to look for and what not. And you know, the first time investor really cares what the house looks like, but really, do you care if it's green outside? You know, I mean, I'll get you a bucket of paint, so like, but you have to recondition them and take the emotion out, because this is an emotionless transaction, so you gotta help them look past that. Location of the unit. That's important when you get an investment property, because typically it needs to be close to where the person lives. So if you're close to a hospital, you can find tenants easy. If you're close to a jail, you can find tenants easy, you know, because those things aren't moving, and all their employees would be there. And you want to be careful if it is in a not so desirable neighborhood, that it's on a bus route and schools. So you just have to pay attention to the neighborhoods that it's in for the price that they can afford and what they're willing to invest in. That it's all important, because when you rent it out, you know, like if I could rent a place close to St. Mary's or something, I've constantly got nurses and all that staff in the hospital constantly coming in, renting, and then leaving, constantly, nonstop.
I have two of mine. I have it with the HR,
Yeah,
the hospital.
Yep.
The hospital leases both of my units out for their
exactly.
their traveling nurses.
It's exactly what it is, yeah.
So I don't even have to worry about it.
So that's really cool, when you're renting the place out. They have to understand the return that they're gonna get. Because just because I say it rents for $2,000 a month, doesn't mean that they're gonna earn $24,000 that year on that house. Right, because I have expenses along the way. So they gotta understand how to figure out the return. And are they gonna finance their purchase, their investment property, or are they gonna buy cash outright? So that's, yeah, so you gotta be a cash or finance, yeah, you gotta be careful with that one also. And the condition of the property. So when you're talking to an investor, you need to really understand what his team looks like, what his
Yeah, his team.
I guess it's his team, right?
You have to say his team, because you need to know if he has contractors on standby.
Right. He's got,
Everything.
yeah, because if this person doesn't have that, he's gonna rely on you. And I'm not playing that. I mean, I can recommend a few people, but I can't find a plumber for myself, so I need to be careful that he's got this already figured out. Right, otherwise it's gonna be on Angie's list all day long. So you gotta be careful with that. And some people look for certain types of risk properties. I have a guy who always looks for burnt houses. If I see a burnt house someplace, I can't to this day call him up and say, hey, the house that just burned down, want it? That's his thing. That's his thing.
Yeah, you don't cheap on the dough.
They're cheap because he'll do the repair. And then I have another guy, he's got a roofing company. So if you walk in the house and you look up and you see sky, he's happy. Right? Because he's like, don't worry, got the roof. So you have to know what their tolerance is on repairs. If they just want lipstick, carpet and paint, flooring and paint, that's lipstick. Then you have to know that. Because not everyone can do a complete rehab. Some people just want something that they can paint and do the floors on, or maybe install appliances. But you got to be careful because the first time investor may not have his little network or team set up. So we have to be careful with that. It's not that easy because he'll get ripped off if he doesn't already have this. People come out of the woodwork and they just like charge you over, whatever. Flippers another one that watches HGTV. That's another one. Is this the first time that they've done a flip or is this their 20th house? Completely different person, right? Because the person where it's their 20th house, they already have their team. They just go in, got their contractor, they're done. They also have to understand the market. A flipper typically would not have bought in the last 2 years. It was too expensive. Not going to make a return on it. Couldn't get the repairs done, couldn't get anyone in there. There was no one to hire. Can't do anything with it. They know the market probably better than we do. Because they're constantly looking. We look with different eyes. They're looking at the return. Repair, we talked about that. Total rehab or lipstick. Flip timeline. Look, was that? Remember Jeff that had the house in Northwood? We bought the house in one market where it was really cheap. I think it was 2014 or something. Bought a house in Northwood for a flip, him and his investor. It took them 3 years to rehab. That's a different market. It's a different market, but also look at the holding costs.
Yeah, but you see, I like Jeff, but you also had to think about where he was at. He was in the historical north, so he had to deal with the city.
Yeah, exactly. So
they can't
that
just lay there,
timeline,
I'm gonna have this.
that's exactly what happened. That timeline, it was supposed to be a 6-month project and it went on for 3 years. Like you couldn't even sell it for a year. Yeah, so you've got to be careful with this timeline because it's not just what it took to repair it. You got your liens and your permits and everything else, but you're also paying to keep it there, right? You've got to pay your taxes, you got to pay your utilities, that's a holding cost. You got to hold on to it. 3 years is a long time. So where you think you might have made 100,000, you deduct all your holding costs and everything, you might come back with 30,000. And then you had a partner and you split it in half. And it's like, I got 15,000 for 3 years.
Yeah, he ended up making like 15,000.
That's what it was. Yeah. That's what it was. After 3 years, it was like, where's my money? Yeah. Optimize, contract to close. So in the contract to close process for flippers, because they're a little different, right? Because time is so critical for them. In the contract to close process, you've got to make sure that everything is lined up. So contract to close is not just getting rid of the contingencies, it's also getting all your suppliers, all the labor, getting everything in order and have everything ready to be delivered the day of closing. So all that's done in contract to close. If you've got to order your floors, if you've got to order your appliances, it's done in those 4 to 5 weeks. You don't wait to closing to start ordering those things. So you got to have access to the property for measurements, to get your contractors in so they can get to your quotes and things. So this contract to close time is critical for a flipper. It's all that time that will be on the other side with the holding costs. Right now, somebody else is paying for all the bills, right? because your seller's still paying their utilities and stuff. So this is important to the flipper. If they don't understand it, it's something they're gonna explain to them. This is when we get all the work done. Because the day we close, you wanna let those people in. You don't wanna start looking for things. So optimize your pre-closing time. I had my investors set so that I wanted to close at 9 in the morning. I mean, like, don't start closing at 9. I want to be signed, sealed, and delivered at 9. And give me those keys. Because then I can get everybody in there the same day. If I wait till 5 o'clock, I just missed the night. Right? So this is critical. Time is money for a flipper. And every day counts. I also get, because I'm going to be selling the property, I get my listing agreement done during the contract to close period. Pre-signed, everything's ready. And I have 2 prices. I have an as-is price, and I have the price after it's, what's it called when the ARV price? The, after return value, ARV price. So I get everything done right away, as is, because maybe somebody else will come in and just take it over and they want to do it themselves. And then the after value, the ARV value. So if he gets all the work done and that's what they prefer, that would be a different price. So I have 2 prices in the MLS for that one property. It goes in broker's remarks. I let them know right up front. If you want it the way it is in its current condition, this is the price. If you want to wait, you can write me an offer. We can have an executed contract, but you want to wait till after repairs are done. This is the after repair value. Yeah, so I always have 2 prices in there. You have to have permission to market the property during the contract to close period. That's what I want to market coming soon. I want to do it before they own it. Think about it. And then I can put a coming soon on the sign. Right?
Especially if you sell it before the new buyer even prepares anything, you just made it.
If you didn't put a dime in it, and I can flip it the same day and have a, you know, it happens. It happens. And the closing costs, I have to be very careful with on that one. So I try to do as much during this contract to close time as I possibly can. The buy and hold person is different, right? They're gonna buy it, fix it, maybe add some things. They also know the market better than you if they've already done it before. If they're new, they're not gonna.
Yeah, but they're still on the timeline.
Yeah, it's still a timeline because you want to rent it.
Yeah.
Same thing. I want it to be, I want the tenant to be able to move in the day that I close, not a month later, because then I have 30 days of vacancy. Right, because vacancy is important. The same with repair and the conditions, you know, whatever your investor is capable of doing, willing to do, or has a team to do. I want a 0 vacancy rate. I want that property rented the day they close, which means I have to start showing it before. So I've got to work with the other agent. Now you're heading into a buyer's market. It's going to be easier to negotiate. The seller's not in control. If we keep going along, what were you telling me about the numbers this morning?
2.7 months of inventory right now.
Yep.
Up from 1.7 last month.
1 month difference, and yeah.
1 month difference, and almost double, 80% more property.
Did you see anything in the price? The average price
Our price hasn't changed.
hasn't changed.
Most things are
It's
down.
just slow.
It actually dropped in some markets. Some areas it dropped.
Yeah. So this is like, it's gonna get better and better for you. It really is better. Right? What you have to be careful with is your contracts with your pricing. You want to do the rent CMA right away and then do your performance. And we're going to talk about the performance. That's the third one. Move up and move down is possibly 4 transactions. So they're in the house. Let's say they had a 5-bedroom house. The kids are gone. They're all off and married. And they're like, it's too big. I want to move down. Well, you could rent this out. Now, what's the benefit of renting it out instead of selling it for someone? What's the benefit of renting it out instead of
Every year.
every year? Residual income, cash flow, tax purposes. I don't have to pay on, so if I sell the house, I'll get all the money, but here I get to spread everything out and I have rental income and I can write against that. Shouldn't tell, well, I'll tell you. You're not IRS, and I think I'm past my 7 years. So when we had condos, we had about 5 or 6 condos that we rented out. Anytime I needed to buy something new for my house,
Yes.
I would buy it from my house and then put that stuff in the condo. And then it was like, oh, look, I just updated the condo, and I would deduct my purchase price.
So
You know how quiet I got, I don't want anyone in here.
on paper, it went towards the condo, but
Yes,
okay.
but
Is it
technically it was in my
Yeah.
house. So there would be a $500 fan in a condo.
But a new house.
But there's lots of tax breaks for this, so that's kind of cool too, because they don't have to cash it all in at one time. They're not, they might have capital gains. Well, that's not an income property. Wait, you have capital gains anyway. Yeah. It's if you're going from really big to really small. The repair and condition of the property, it's their house. They raise their family in it. They know what's wrong with it. They know what has to be done, so there's no risk, right? They know their house, they know, well, the roof's kind of old, I might have to replace it soon. Okay, but I don't have to figure it out. They know it. So that's the easy thing about what they can do to repair. And if they want to do, they're not going to do a total rehab because they've been living in it, so it can't be that bad. They'll know what needs to be changed. You might want to change some appliances out or something. And also there's zero vacancy rate because they're already in there. And when they move, you can have the tenant in there right away. No vacancy rate. Because the day that they close, you've been showing it the whole time as a rental, so you can have the tenant move in within days after a deep clean. You could have the tenant move in. So you've got how many transactions do we have so far on this? So if they're the ones who live in there and they're gonna move out and buy someplace else, that's the one, right? Maybe they'll buy something that you already have listed. That'd be nice. And you also have the tenant that moves into this one, which you'll have every single year. So you can give them a discount on that because there might not be another agent involved in that. So you have 2 or 3 deals already. So that's kind of nice. You still do a CMA and a pro forma. You still do those things for them. And here's my seasoned investor, because I just love this car. I used to be a Cadillac of it. This is the Cadillac of investors. Now it's a Bentley. Yeah. I need to upgrade that to the rules. So this is your season. This is the person who has a huge portfolio. They'll have income properties. They could have multiple units like apartment buildings or something. They'll have some DTQs. You team up with a commercial agent if you need someone like this, because they'll have commercial needs. So while you're taking care of their residential income needs, you can get referrals on the commercial needs. Don't do them at the same. Don't mix that thing. Let them know that you have a commercial specialist. Don't let them think that you're the commercial genius and the income genius. So be careful with it.
Why do you call it your Bentley?
Because they have such a huge portfolio, huge diverse portfolio. And I only I'll get referrals on a lot of stuff that I can't do. And I get all their needs, like they'll constantly rolling over every single year. These types of, it's known that these kind of people will do 6 to 10 transactions every year. So
Okay.
they're constantly buying and selling. So they buy, hold, and sell. So if you get someone like that, I think a couple of people, Tito has someone like that. Give you an example, Julie, the King group. So when they moved to Alabama, and she just got her license, one of her first purchases was someone who bought a unit to rent. And it was this huge investor. And she now gets over 50 deals every year from that investor. All of her business comes from Alabama. There's 4 or 5 deals here a year. So that investor is in Alabama, and he buys all the low-end single families and rents them out. And her job is just to find them. She never sees them. She runs the numbers. And then She has a runner in Alabama that just goes to look at it, let her know what the condition is, what the ARV is, and then they rent it out. She gets all those purchases, and now they're in 3 or 4 other states. That was in her first year that she met that company. So it happens. It happens. Yeah. So always team up with a commercial agent on this one, and you've got to be real direct with someone like this. Like, they don't want to hear the color of the house. They don't want to. Couldn't care less. Could not care less. So you got to be careful with them. So here's how you add value to the transaction. You need to know the list price, calculate what the offer is going to be, the current value, which is your list price, hopefully, after repair value, close date, and hold time. So those are the beginning numbers that you need. What they don't care about is what the yard looks like, what color paint's out there. They don't care about any of those things. You have to know all the holding costs. You have to know what they are. Which is the utilities. So you need to be really smart with this. You need to ask a lot of questions when you're talking to the listing agent, or if the listing is accurate. There are some neighborhoods that we have gas here, so you need to be careful with that. You need to be careful with those. What utilities are included? You need to know what the debt service is. What's debt service mean? You don't know what debt service means.
Interest on a loan,
The what?
interest on a loan.
No,
Like, when.
close.
The mortgage.
It's the mortgage,
Yeah.
principal and interest.
Yeah.
Principal and interest payment. So they call that debt service. So we're gonna calculate debt service ratio in a minute, so that we know how to figure that out. We need to know about the associations and the rules and regulations. Rules and regulations is the most important thing about any association, even in residential. I couldn't care less what your monthly payment is if I don't know what the rules and regulations are. And then you have to know what the monthly payments include. That's easy. Do you have to, okay, so let me ask you, if there is a yard, who pays for the lawn maintenance? Landlord or tenant?
It depends what they
Depends.
work out, however
I
you.
think
What's in the contract.
What's preferable?
The tenant.
The owner.
Um,
Yeah,
Appropriate, right? It costs more to redo it than anything else. Pay for it and include it in the rent, right? You just include it in the rent, it's part of the price, but you don't want to let them do it, ever. Unless they have their own lawn maintenance company. No, that's like asking a mechanic to take care of his car. So still, you want to do the lawn maintenance. Taxes, what kind of taxes are we talking about? Property taxes, right? Okay, yeah, because we're talking about holding costs. What do I have to pay each month to keep this place going? What other things could be included in holding, in your holding costs?
Insurance.
Insurance. Yeah, insurance wasn't on there.
If it's cash and the tenant pays like a rental insurance, is that enough? Like, if there's no loan on the property?
Anyone?
So if the owner bought the house cash, there is no need to put in insurance because there's no, obviously.
They still have insurance on the property, but not of the stuff inside the property. They need
Walls,
insurance.
walls in is the tenant.
Yeah, so.
Walls in is the tenant,
Yeah.
outside is the landlord.
You see that a lot where they require the renter's insurance.
Yeah, no, but what I was saying is, I know people that they pay cash and they don't wanna pay for insurance. They're like, oh,
Crazy.
let's just the tenant pay the renter's insurance.
No, because liability.
The house burns, they're gonna get, they won't get their money for the furniture, but you ain't gonna get it.
Yeah, and then, and what if they hurt themselves? What if they slip and fall? Yeah, so cash has nothing to do with it. Yeah, that's why I say if it's cash, why should I get title insurance?
Right.
Why do you need title insurance? If it's cash, why do you need title insurance?
Title 10 explained it like a month ago. Come to that class.
Make sure that you own the property.
But title insurance doesn't mean that you own the property.
Well,
It
no,
means
it's
that nobody else
there's
has
nothing
lien
to go
until the
after.
day it was
Yeah,
covered.
right.
That doesn't mean from today forward, it doesn't do anything today forward, so why do I need title insurance?
If a contractor did some work in the past.
Something can pop up, right? Yeah. Yeah, up until, so they insure up until the day that you took over that there were no liens or encroachments. So you want to make sure nothing pops up in between. But a lot of times when you're selling those low end condos for, 30,000, they wouldn't get title insurance. They wouldn't, because they were gonna hold on to it. They're gonna hold on to it for 2 years until the market improves and they can make even more money. So they were getting cash flow in 2 to 3 years, and then the house would appreciate and then they would sell it. So they knew they were putting liens on it. They did not get title insurance. So they were collecting rent for, let's say, 2 to 3 years. They bought it at 30, they collect rent for 2 years, around was 1,400 a month for a 2-1. So they got all that money, and they sold it for 100,000 3 years later, and so they got all that money too, and they refused to get title insurance. So I'm like, are you crazy? Like, for what? I'm not keeping it. Right. So, are there any other holding costs? Insurance is a good one. Is there anything else you can think of that they would have to pay on a monthly basis to keep the place going?
Food maintenance, or because food.
If there's a pool, you'd have to have pool maintenance, yeah. And again,
That can be expensive.
that's expensive. Cause you definitely have to keep that going, because that goes 2 or 3 weeks and it's finished. Yeah, that you'd have to do it, that or cover it.
And whatever
See what-
repairs they need. If
Yeah.
they're above,
So you know what a good thing to put in here? Home warranty. Home warranty. So every time the tenant has a problem, it's a $75 service call. I would put, that's $500, $600 a year. I put home warranty on it. Less things to worry about. Okay. Improvements you have to know. Your other expenses when you first purchase the places, you have to know what capital improvements, because that's part of the purchase price. If I buy the house for 100,000, I have to put in a $20,000 roof. My purchase is now 120,000, not 100. Because I have to do a capital improvement. So that would change the purchase price. Even though on the HUD it says 100, and then I have another thing for the roof. For me, as an investor, that's $120,000 purchase. So your improvements, your capital improvements have to be in there. Then the cost of sale. I always think this is funny with these flip things. When they talk about cost of sale, they don't deduct the costs. They just like, I bought it for 100, I sold for 150, I made 50,000. No, dude, you get all the improvements. And you gotta take off the cost of sale, your closing costs. You gotta pay those too. You didn't make 50,000. Their math is horrible. And your holding costs. Because if you held on to it for 3 to 6 months, the total of this has to come off over here as well, and then you would get your net, and that's your net before taxes. You want to get that net as small as possible, but that's your net before taxes. And then you can divide it by your holding time, and then you can figure out your net before taxes. And if you have an investor, then you want to split that whole net up, and now you make $75. So you've really got to look at the bigger picture, and that's how the agent adds value, because the agent is doing all this. So you've got to think that way. Like, let's go over what you're really going to make on this, and do you still want to purchase this property? Do you still want to go through with this? Because most people wouldn't consider, they just see what they paid for it and what they sold it for. That's all they're going to see. And that's how you add value. So we have what we call a pro forma. So it's a spreadsheet. I'm going to show you a real one in a minute. So in the pro forma, and it's a simple spreadsheet, you're going to list, so down the side or across the top, I don't care which way, but this one shows it down the side, where you put the 3 or 4 addresses that you want to compare. So let's say he finds 3 or 4 now he hasn't seen them yet, right? You're just looking in the MLS. This is information from the MLS. So instead of sending them pictures of MLSs, which we're so good at doing, here, look at these. You list the numbers on here so they can look at their income. They don't care about the pictures. They don't care where it is. Your job is to find them, to put the data in here and say, which one do you want? That's what they're looking at. Now you're speaking their language. You send them MLSs and you're sending it to a very emotional person that wants to look at it. This is an investor who wants to see their bottom line. So you put your address, the subdivision, if there is one, because we want to compare apples to apples, your bed and bath, and a basic description. You put the list price, you put the gross income, because you've done a CMA for the rentals, if it's a buy and hold. You put all your expenses in, capital investment, and your cap rate. And that way, they're looking at everything that they're going to spend. They look at everything, the whole financial snapshot of that one unit. And the end result is my cap rate. What's a cap rate?
Their, return on investment minus all the costs, so what they make outside of mortgage.
It's a capitalization rate, so it is pennies on the dollar, right? So if my cap rate is 5, what am I making? Of 100,000. 5%, right? Cap rates used to be as high as like 12 and 15. So if anyone ever says to you they want a 12% cap rate, tell them to go back to 2009. Get in your time machine, go to 2009 to go buy it.
Still 2, 7, or 8, though.
6, 7, and 8. 8 is really good.
8 with no HOA or anything.
Yeah, hand this up. Sorry, I gave you the one. So this way, the first thing they're gonna look at is the cap rate, and then they go backwards. I guess I should put it in the first column, because that's the most interesting thing on here. I don't care. I mean, if they're all 3 2s, I don't care. It doesn't make a difference to me. Because if they're all 3, if I can only afford 500,000 and I want to rent it out, then whether it's 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, I really wouldn't care less, because I can only afford 500,000. So I don't care about, so this part over here, wouldn't even care. But I am looking at the numbers. Okay. So we're gonna look at a real spreadsheet, and this is what the pro forma kind of looks like. Now, this one goes in the other direction. It doesn't make a difference. It's whatever you're comfortable with. So this one's a little clear. So it's got the number of units that were one left. It's got the number of units you want to compare, right? So it's got, what does this one have? Four units. And it's got the monthly rental income, the annual income, the real estate tax, repairs, lawn service. Management fee is typical, a management fee is typically 10% of the rent on a monthly basis. So here's the rent 900, and here's the management fee. So if you have a property manager, if they're going to do their own property management, you can take that up. You don't need that in there. Other vacancy rate is a half month's rent. So I always put in half month's rent for vacancy rate.
Is that per unit?
Yeah, yeah. So like this unit is 900 a month. My vacancy rate is 450. So that's the vacancy rate between. It typically takes like a half a month to get one person out and the other person in.
Also for management.
Management fees, the same thing. Okay. Management fees, they're going to be there all the time if they're going to pay a property manager, because they go by the year, so they don't go like that. And then I have insurance. And then here's my gross operating expenses. So that's all these things. From the double line to the double line. My net operating income is my gross income, which is there, minus my operating expenses. So here's my gross income of 8,000 on that one. So after I took my annual income, deducted my expenses, and then I get my NOI, net operating income. Then I can figure out the cap rate. You know, in this example, looks like they're all 11%. And then what I typically do is I'll share it. So like my spreadsheet, it might take you an hour to do your own spreadsheet. I could say, I'll send this to you. I could. But if you don't understand how to make it work, you're going to have a problem fixing it when the seller gets it. So you really have to spend a little bit of time on this. It's basic arithmetic. There's nothing on here but add, subtract, divide, and multiply. Nothing else. But then what I do is I protect the cells that I don't want them, like the calculations, I don't want them to change the calculations, so I protect them. I use Excel and I protect it so we can't change those. But then I share the sheet with him so he can make all the changes he wants and puts in different He can put in his own units. I just protect the calculations. And I don't want him to mess anything up on spend a lot of time on my calculations. Don't mess that up. But you can put everything else in and you can now use this for your other properties. Did I add value to that investor? Sure, right? I've given him a tool and he can check his own stuff this way. And a lot of times they'll have their own spreadsheets and stuff, but I give them mine and then they start, if they're really good, they'll make changes to it. Otherwise, they're gonna figure all this out. And then I have what the calculations are, like net operating income is gross operating income minus operating expenses. No, operating expenses. My cap rate is the purchase price divided by the net operating income. I have it in here. I don't have to guess. My list price, cash flow is gross rent minus my expenses minus my debt service rate. So I have the formulas in there. And hopefully, he doesn't know what I'm talking about. And I will. Now, this is my cheat sheet that I gave you guys. So when I'm talking to an investor, mine's laminated. Because I keep it someplace where I can get to it all the time. Now I don't sell anymore, but I had it down to a science where if I use Dr. Padre calls, I'm getting my little cheat sheet out. I'm like, what do you need? He goes, Lord, figure out the cash flow. And I'm like, okay. But I cheat. So I have that. I can explain it to him. I'm okay. So these are the most basic investor language terms that you can use and learn. These are the most important. Cash flow. How much money is in my pocket, in my bank account every month after everything gets paid? When you work with an investor, it's always helpful for them to take ownership of the property and then incorporate it. Let it have its own name in Sunbiz, which I use the address of the property, 123 Main Street, LLC. So like, so simple. And then it has its own EIN number. So while I'm holding the property, all the expenses and everything that has to do with that property is not commingled with other funds. So when I sell it, because remember, there's lots of tax breaks, right? Because what do you call it when it loses value? So I know exactly the day that I opened it and the day I closed. There's no secrets. I don't have to figure it out. So my depreciation, recoup, and everything is right in there. All the expenses, everything is in that one account. So much easier. And then I can also put my escrow in there, right? Because I have first, last, and security. Last and security goes right into that one account. So much easier. It's clean. And every time I sell one, I close out that account. Or I can just rename it really, but every LLC, every property. So if you get someone kind of used to that on the first one, it may seem odd, but then after that, when they realize the benefit of when you're talking about taxes and IRS, everything is in one place and you don't have to calculate anything. So cash flow is easy. You take your gross rent, you subtract your experience, your expenses, and it has an equal sign. It's a minus your DSR. So it says NOI equals 895 minus your debt service of 648 times 12 months. And then you have your cash flow.
Question on that. When you sell the property, then you reuse that EIN number
No.
for name, or do you have to reopen?
It's attached to the corporation,
Those is after you sell the property.
which is really good because when you file your taxes, it doesn't look like one runs into the other because it's a different EIN number for that property. Yeah, it's clean, beginning to end, clean. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, you can't, because they're attached to a social security, they're attached to the LLC. Yeah. Cap rate, this is really easy. You take your annual net operating income. Net operating income is on the bottom right, so the calculation's already there. So you take that answer and divide it by your purchase price. So this one here, your annual net operating income was $895, divided by 12, so my monthly. And the purchase price was $125,000. So this cap rate is 8.6. Would that be good?
Yeah.
That'd be good, right?
Let's move over to debt service ratio. So you take your net operating income. You divide it by your principal and interest, fancy name, debt service. Take your net operating income, divide it by your debt service. So this one was my monthly NOI of $895. Different things here, divided by my mortgage payment of $648. What does 1.38 mean?
The rate.
That debt service ratio, what does that mean? 1.38.
Percent.
Mean you're gaining money, not losing money.
Break even would be 1. That means my mortgage and my income are break even at 1. 0.38 above means I'm getting 38 cents on every dollar above that. If it was under, I would be losing. My mortgage payment would not, my income doesn't cover my mortgage payment. When people were when they were buying these houses and they lost their value, but so the rent went down, but they still owed the full amount. Remember in 2000, I bought the house in 2006, I paid 500,000. In 2009, it was worth 250,000. So my rent at the time had lowered equally, so I wasn't getting enough rent to cover the mortgage payment. So I was under 1, so I could be like 0.8. So I was losing 20 cents on every dollar that I had to pay over the rent to make my mortgage payment.
Freedom, I would love to have you at 0.8. A lot lower than that.
It was lower, but that's the example. If it's under 1, that's how much you're losing on every dollar. If it's over 1, that's how much you're gaining. So this one has a 38% gain on it, which is really awesome. Usually it's 1.567. Gross operating income, potential monthly income, less your vacancy rate. I use 5%, minus your operating expense. And so the example is there. And net operating income, your gross income minus your expenses. It's real basic. The thing is to use the initials when you're talking to someone and they think you're a G. Oh, she's not a regular agent. She's like a commercial agent. She knows what an NOI and a DSR is. That's what it's. You don't look up the stuff. Anybody can Google the calculations. And the other key is to use the same calculations for all the properties. So when I look at cap rate in the MLS, what the agent puts in, you're going to have to validate. Don't assume what they put in is correct. Because when we look at the net operating income minus, because it has the expenses there, the problem with the way agents calculate net operating income is they leave out insurance and taxes. They leave out something. Everybody leaves out something. So you're not comparing apples to apples when you get the cap rate. Because they left something off. Maybe the lawn maintenance, but they left. So as long as you use your formula and you always include your answer doesn't have to be 100% right. You may not know what the taxes are. You may not know what the lawn service is. But if you use the same calculation for the 5 properties that you're talking to someone about, then it's the same all the way across. Whereas if you use this agent and this, I guarantee you, if 5 of you did cap rates, I come up with 5 different answers. Because everyone has a different way of doing it. They're not 100% right or wrong. It's just not consistent. I can't just take theirs and automatically run with it and say, oh, this one says it's 9% and this one, the agent said it's 12% because you're reading the MLS. No, you have to calculate it yourself to make it consistent all the way across. Because the cap rate is really what people are looking at. How much am I going to make on this property? They always look at the cap rate. And debt service ratio, of course, there's no loan payment, you don't have to worry about it, then you're okay. It's only when there's a loan payment that it's so important that the loan payment isn't higher than the income. Because that's where we go bad. And when you're working with people that want to become investors and they want to take the equity, all right, let me just make this statement. Don't let someone take the equity out of their primary residence to purchase an investment property. If they're, don't let them, they have to leave 20% or 25% in their primary property, leave at least 25% equity in it. Don't let them take 100% of one to go buy an investment property, because now they're putting their primary residence at risk. Never let someone take the whole thing out, which is the other thing we did in 2006, personally.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Our house was a $500,000 house. But, and then, oh, look, I can get a loan for $1 million. Let's go buy 5 income property. Primary house at 100%, $1 million, 5 or 6 income properties. And it flipped. $1 million house, I'm back down to 500,000, but I still have to make the payment for the whole $1 million. I over leveraged the big house. You're right, even if I sold the little ones, which are now going at half price, if I walk away from them, I still have to pay that $1 million. So I overextended, over leveraged the primary residence. You never do that. And what people did, everyone was scared, they just walked away from their investment incomes and just left them, just abandoned them. Right? I'm standing in front of a house in 441, the big fancy front by Versailles. I had a house in Versailles. My sign's up front, and the neighbor calls me up on Sunday and says, they're taking down the lead glass doors, the front doors. There's someone taking the doors down. The original owner sold them on Craigslist. And the people were coming up and taking the doors down, the appliances. The neighbor called me up because my sign was there. They're like, you need to come over here. The doors are coming up. The toilet. Oh yeah. I walk into a house and I show the master bedroom and I'm like, master bath. I'm like, and here's a master bath. And there was just a circle where the toilet used to be.
Those were one of the foreclosures you were doing?
Yeah.
There were holes in the wall, if they were
Yeah.
pipes, they were gone.
Oh my God. Pool equipment, all the pool equipment was gone. Yeah, that was a free for all. It was fun.
So much fun.
It was fun.
The story that
It was fun. But that's what happens if you overextend, over leverage. Don't let anyone over leverage their principal residence. It's just not worth it. They need to understand that the market can go back. I never want to say never, that it'll never go back to the way it was in 2009. But who knows? Like if we went to war or something and we collapsed, this real estate would collapse if anything. And so, but these are great buzzwords, and if you understand that, the big one is cap rate and net operating income, because that's what people want to see. And then you would be fine.
Well, if there is a copy of the spreadsheet you had prior to the.
Nope.
No.
I mean, just to.
I'm going to show you. So that I can share that. Okay, creative financing, cash, of course. Right, it's not very creative, but remember, cash is not really cash when you're investing. Right? It's not really cash when you're investing in an income property, because you're self-financed. You took that money out, now you're self-financed. So it was cash to purchase, but now you're self-financed because you pulled that out. So you got to be careful with that too. You've got to protect it. Hard money is hard to pay back. Hard money is, okay, it's never acceptable, right? But if you're doing a flip, hard money is okay, because you're only going to hold on to it for like a small, not a year, right?
Not 3 years.
So it's just a temporary thing, not 3 years. Yeah, a 3-year flip is not a flip. So hard money is okay. Just be careful with that. It's other people's money. It's expensive. Like I said, it's hard to pay back. It's usually double whatever the interest rate is, whatever's going out there now. There's points at the beginning. There's points at the end. There's prepayment penalties. It's expensive, but it's temporary. And points are, those are write-offs on your taxes. So it's not too bad. So it's okay for flipping. Fannie Mae will allow you 10 loans, 10 Fannie Mae backed loans. So if you qualify for that, then go ahead and use that. That's probably the best one. And then 1031 exchange is a great way to purchase real estate. you know, like to take one property, not take the capital gains, not take the income and purchase the other property. So 1031 exchange is great. And another way to create a financing is a self-directed IRA. So we'll go over some of these. 10
Oh,
What's that?
sorry. I was just gonna take a picture.
of the creative financing. Cash, hard money, loans, 1031 exchange and self-directed IRA. So a 1031 exchange, 1031 is IRS tax code. Right, like you have a 1040, 1031? Yeah, it's IRS tax code, that's all it really means. And IRS allows you to do exchanges under certain circumstances. It has to be a like-kind exchange, so real estate for real estate. That's it. It has to be an investment property. You can't have used it for personal things. It has to be pure investment properties, like kind of equal or greater value. There's 5 types of exchanges, and I think we did this 2 years ago. I'm gonna have someone come in and there's a 3 CEU class, 3-hour CEU class for 1031 exchange. That way you'll get 3 continuing education units for your 14 hours. So I'll have him come in and do that, because that would be really cool to talk about. It's really confusing on the different types of exchanges. The most common is the delayed 1031 exchange. So that's the most common. That's what you guys run into all the time. You don't need any extra paperwork for the purchase on a 1031 exchange, whether they're selling it or buying it. You don't need extra. There's the addendum. I don't think there's an addendum anymore. I think it's actually in the contract, like FERPTA is in the contract, 1031 exchange language is already in the contract. The delayed is the most common. I'm gonna sell the house now and I'm gonna purchase something within a time frame. It's less than 9 months, and it goes by income tax schedule, like April 15th and December 31st and April 15th. That's when they say 9 months. So the delayed is easy. The simultaneous exchange is a 1031 exchange where everything closes on the same day, the sale and the purchase. That's the hardest one to do, because it's not a residential purchase, it's a little different. And then there's a reverse exchange, improvement, and personal property exchange. So the 1031 exchanges need an intermediary. So it's typically a company, which is the cheapest, or a specialty attorney can do a 1031 exchange. It's a special attorney that only does 1031 exchanges. So what it means is the money that you gain from a sale never gets touched by you, so it doesn't get reported to IRS, so you don't pay taxes on it. The money goes straight from the purchase to the intermediary. He's allowed to hold it in escrow, and then it goes to the other purchase, so your name never shows on that income, which is really cool. So you're deferring your taxes until you're over 65, and then hopefully you never have to pay tax on it. So it's really cool, really popular. And when you talk to someone, they're like, oh, I'm doing a 1031 exchange. I always recommend, the minute they mention 1031 exchange, who's handling your escrow? Who's your intermediary? Who's doing this with you? I need that person's name, because I need the dates. Because if I don't know what the time frames are, so they have a year to purchase, to spend the money, but the year ends on December 31st, but the closing doesn't have to happen until April 15th, because that's when taxes are due. So there's this gap that I'm always nervous about, because if I'm not careful of the gap and the rules for that person, that intermediary knows, if I make a mistake, they're gonna pay tax on that one. So that's why it's, you know, like if someone says they're getting a divorce and my attorney told me I need to sell, and here's, well, who's your attorney? Because I need to talk to your attorney, because I don't believe it. Right? I need to talk to the source. If it's in probate, I want to talk to the attorney. Well, if it's a 1031 exchange, I want to talk to the intermediary.
But that's only for their investment properties, right? It's not for their
It's not for
primary
personal.
home, like if they're, because if they don't have to pay capital gains.
Yeah, I can't help it. That's their account. But here, I just need to know what the dates are. So this is really cool to use, but they'll bring it up. They're like, hey, I'm doing a 1031 exchange, or I'm thinking about it. Like I have a duplex, I want to sell it. I'm thinking about 1031 exchange. Well, You can Google 1031 exchange company. The most popular one is called the 1031 exchange company. So, they do seminars all the time, so we'll get them in.
Doesn't Jacob do it? I think I heard him.
He handles the closing, he doesn't actually work with the intermediary, because you still need a closing company, and he knows how to handle, so he'll deal with the intermediary, yeah. Because he has to know what the dates are too, so we don't mess up. And then it doesn't go in the purchaser's name, and there's all kinds of stuff, so because he's so familiar with
Yeah.
handling them, it's great to work, well, you always wanna work with
Yeah.
him. He just knows it. Self-directed IRA, this is my favorite. You guys know what an IRA is, right? What's an IRA? Come on. Fun, right? Right? So you can take money out of your paycheck. And I think you're allowed up to $6,000 married filing joint. And that money comes out and it goes into an IRA, and you don't pay tax on that money until you retire. It's great. So it's pre-tax dollars. There's other kinds of pre-tax dollars, but the IRA, most common. So let's see, everything can be purchased. So that's the regular IRA, right? So you're buying bonds, stocks, stuff like that. But you can do a self-directed IRA where you pick what you want to invest in, pre-tax dollars. Because there's two different types of IRA. The regular IRA is you need to talk to some kind of financial specialist, that's some kind of mumbo jumbo with your stuff. What does IRA stand for? Individual. So a self-directed IRA, they would have nothing to do with, because you're the one who's directing where the money goes. And you can buy anything with an IRA, except collectibles, artwork, metals and coins, collectibles, rugs, antiques, gems, stamps, life insurance. So you can buy anything non-collectible with your self-directed IRA. You can buy a boat. You could buy anything with a self-directed IRA.
You were allowed to buy it in your IRA and then rent it back to yourself.
No,
You do that?
no.
You cannot personally benefit.
You can't personally benefit because it's an investment property. You can't. So you can buy all the real estate you want with your self-directed IRA. And this is really cool. The IRA collects all the money and you never pay tax on it. So if your place was collecting 50,000 a year, kind of a rental that would be, you wouldn't pay tax on it until you're ready to pull out after you're 65. So that money sits there. It can get as rich as it wants. There's no $6,000 a year limit. It can just grow. It can buy other investment properties. It's the coolest thing. And how do you open one? You have one? What'd you buy with it? Nothing. So the money's just sitting there. So you can buy a house with it. So what happens is that the SDIRA purchases the property. But you can't have any vested interest. You can't use it. You can't fix it. You can't pay yourself management fees. There's a lot of stuff you can't do, but it could fix itself. So you can get a contractor. The house, the money in there can buy new appliances. It can do the renovations. It can do everything, and it collects all the rent and it pays all the bills.
That's great for investors.
It's great. So there's lots of IRA, SDIRA is what you're looking for, not a regular financial assistant. Let me see if I have anything on.
So you'll go to your bank and you ask for.
No. No. You've got to contact an SDIRA company. Yeah. So if you look up SDIRA, I used to do it all the time. I wish I had some names. Let me see if I have any. There's a
Think Edward Jones.
No. They do SDIRA, but they don't do real estate. And they don't do the administration. So the SDIRA company actually does, like, they pay themselves monthly, pennies, $100 a month. And they handle all the invoices and bills and they pay everything. They pay the taxes, they pay the insurance. So it's like a little administrator sitting there taking care of the house. Here's the three big ones: Entrust, Equity Trust, and Pensco is my favorite. And we can have them zoom in and they can tell you exactly how to set it up. You
Yeah.
pay them a one-time set. Who's yours with, you know?
Charles and Schwab.
That's a different, yeah, that's a regular IRA. Yeah, be careful with that. They don't like real estate. So that's the difference because they're not making money on it. They're not making any money on it. These companies make money because they're doing the administration. That's where their money comes from. They write the checks.
You get rolled out so much.
You have to, you have to roll it over. And they give you a hard time. It takes like 46 weeks to roll it over because they want to argue with you.
No, mine doesn't.
They roll it so they can roll it over.
No, no,
quick.
she needs to roll it.
To roll it over to one of these that takes care of it.
Takes 24 hours.
It's supposed to.
No, but within they do.
Okay, because it's supposed to, but what they want to do, they want to hold on to it as long as they legally can because they're making money on it, right? So it's like banks holding a check, saying they have to hold 10 days, and they're like, it doesn't take 10 days, just spend my money. Yeah, that's really all it is.
I mean,
It's not
if
that
you
they
take
can't.
everything out, probably, but if you take 30, 40, 50% of it,
Yeah,
because
so
I've done it. in
they
the
want
past.
your business.
Doesn't Fidelity do it too?
No, no. See, these are administration companies. They're just completely different, yeah. And it's different language. Like if you ask someone, first of all, nobody wants to deal with real estate if they're not in real estate, because I'll say, oh, no, you can't sell it. It's too tangible. It's like negative, but it's because they don't make money on it. Right? So these people make their money off of the checks and the administration. That's really all it is. It's just where is their income, where the money come from? And that's why I like, because these are big companies. There's even a company that will North something trust, which is a bank that will, it's a bank. I'll have to look it up. And they will do 60-40 loan to value ratio mortgages on SDIRAs purchases. So your SDIRA pays its mortgage payment.
Wow.
And they'll do 60-40. So 40% has to come from your IRA. They'll give you a loan on the other 60%. And these companies pay your bills. The biggest thing on I'll get those two companies in. I'll get SDIRA and I'll get 1031 exchange, and then you can really, that's what they do. I'm not trying to sell them. But it's good to know about it in case someone says, I'm going to purchase a property and it's an SDIRA. When you start talking, you know how people attract. Once you start talking to a couple investors, you know they're going to spread your name, and people are going to come up with 1031 exchange, and they're going to come up with this. So I just don't want these things to sound foreign to you, because they'll tell their friends, oh, you know, Richard knows what he's talking about. You got to deal with him. He did my cap rate and I figured everything. It's like it means something, but they'll pass your name around, right? Because they hang together, right? You know, I would joke that when a woman's pregnant, everybody's pregnant, because you just kind of attract to each other, right? So it's the same thing with investors. Like they're constantly talking, like they're friends, they're all in it together. So they'll spread your name. So once it starts, it's like if someone finds out you do rentals, what do you end up doing for the next year? Rentals. Yeah, it's the worst thing. But that's how it happens. So you can get lots of business out of that. So now I get ready to get these two classes in here. Okay, questions? Was this a little helpful?
Very.
A little helpful?
Question,
Yeah.
with card money, do they have like a time span to spend that money?
No, time spent to pay it back.
Okay.
So I'll lend you $100,000. I'll give it to you for 3 years. I want a balloon payment at the end, so I don't care how you get that 100,000 back to me. I want 6 points when I give it to you, and I want another 8 points when we close. And prepayment penalty might be 15%.
Okay.
You can get ahead on your payments?
Yeah, because I want to.
Oh, we want you to pay it all at the end, so we'll get like.
Yeah.
Give it
payment
16%
penalty.
on your 100, right?
You end up paying a million.
Right. Hopefully you can drag it out a
How
few
can you
years.
become a hard money lender?
Now,
Yeah.
we just talked about SDIRAs, right? So you could take your SDIRA and sell someone a mortgage. You can finance someone's house as hard money. That's what hard money is. is he takes his money, a couple $100,000, and she buys a house with it, and it's hard money for you, but it's income for him, as long as he doesn't take any of that money and it goes right back into the SDR. All the payments and interest and everything that you collect goes right back into it. That's where most of hard money comes from.
SD, IRA.
Yeah,
Really?
these people that have these huge,
Okay.
yeah. If it's single one-on-ones, that's where it comes from, not if it's a bank or, you know.
Right.
Yeah. But it's pretty cool because you could actually finance houses that way. For other people, there's nothing, all you do is collect the interest, isn't it? That's the
Yeah, I know
easiest
somebody
way.
that's doing it right now and they're just collecting the interest and then at the end, they'll have to collect the whole amount.
So your money, you're made whole, but you're not touching it, right? You just, and the interest is everything's non-taxable until.
It's not like you're gonna use the money anyways, because you can't touch it till it's. Right.
Well, you can, there's a penalty,
Yeah.
it's a high.
Yeah.
What is yours, is it like 20% or something, 30%? It's high.
Yeah.
Mine's not that high.
No,
No,
it used to be. If you pulled it out early. Well, then your age is involved also.
I'll tell you.
There goes interest. How much? 15?
I have a foreign investor that he wants to put his money to work, but he was a little scared about the market and buying and flipping and holding and renting and all that. And so somebody, I don't know.
Mine is 10%.
One of these,
That's nothing,
one of those overthinkers.
but everyone's tax bracket, you know. And it depends how much.
Yeah, mine.
And so someone told them about becoming a, her money lender.
Yeah.
And, they told them about the extra points in front and all of that. So they did the numbers and he was like, I like them better. I wouldn't be doing it like that.
You're still gonna put a lien on, you still have a promissory, it's a regular mortgage, right? You still have a promissory note. You still have a mortgage and you can get the property back because
But
it's
to be able to
collateral.
do that, because I'm thinking just because he's foreign, it will be a little more complicated as far as, doesn't he have to
Where's the money?
get with an attorney in another country?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
unless they move it here, right?
Yeah.
And then just have an attorney and,
Put in my bank account.
Put it in your bank account.
that's what the person that told them about it was like. Just put it into his name. And do all.
We're family, so.
Let him pay taxes on it. Which is you.
Yeah, right.
All right, anything else? Good,
Awesome.
but did it make you scarier than you?
No.
Okay. Right, it's just being able, so it doesn't sound foreign, it's really, and you are gonna start getting calls, because I've already heard some of the calls, I hear calls in there, so I'm like, I already hear the calls.
Yeah.
And the minute I hear, oh, I got an investor, I'm like, oh, God, I'm so
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just gonna go look at
it's a
properties.
I have
It's
to.
like all over, right?
Yeah,
So do you think you need a buyer's brokerage agreement with those people?
I do have one. For 6 months.
I do hear a lot. I do hear a lot from them when I'm the listing agent. I had one that was like, he was in California and he was ready to, put an offer for me, blah, 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 but I needed to be there after closing. I needed to be there to show the property to all the tenants, the potential
Oh, great.
tenants. But he didn't want to pay me. What would he do?
That's funny.
Yeah, all kinds of characters on it.
All right, okay, we're all set?
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, good luck.
Thank you. So much.
We're gonna put that guy in your downline or what's going on?
I'm cutting it. We just like he's looking from different brokerages right now. So I brought, you can say he was out searching. I called him.
Oh, forget it.
I said, come over here.
He'll come back.
Oh, no, he's going to a partnership.
Who is? The other guy?
That guy.
It's right here.
Partnership with, you want to interview with them. Should have him talk to you.
Yeah, you should have.
But he had to
No,
pick this right, that's why he left.
It's a mindset.
He's coming tomorrow.
Mindset.
Oh, good. So
I'll be here.
fine.
Okay.
He's fine.
It's a mindset.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
just hang here for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna be lost. You have no idea.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So I used to have my own brokerage. And they used to call me from this office. Try to refer me and I was like, no, I'm good. And one time I had to refer me. And so they called me and they tried to set.
If I see them in the store,
And
I see them on the line.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I can't have the ones this way because my foot doesn't fit. I have to get my.
Yeah, exactly.
I tried to.
Oh, my gosh.
I went like, never know, because no one of them was sure, so it would be fine, it was right out. I mean, how long? Oh my God. If you know that, you can tell, you can be, you can pretend, oh, you want, but it comes to. Yeah, the target down my house.
Oh, my God.
One time, I went to the one on antenna. Or I went yesterday. Oh my God. They had some, the clear top. Yeah. But they were all big numbers. I'm like, Lord, what's up? These what numbers is she? I really thought about it. They didn't have any small sizes. I ended up finding some other little hands. You're very, I'm right to you. I know.
No.
I figured my back was 49.
This is 500, it's a big house. You know what your seller is gonna take, whether you're interested. So.
Question. How do I know, what is it? Oh, I have to look at it. No, it's the. Like how to find out where the homes that have a small work. Because it's saying what that is. Exactly, and some people are you, right? So somebody in there. And so you're gonna have to ask, like, I wanna be opening for those, so I can find something. Yeah. But obviously, once I figure it out, then I can offer that.
Yeah.
to
The
people.
other thing you do now is a search.
It says people want to make sure there is no too long sale. Yeah. So first of all, I have to ask the seller. So which means, and you can't get the seller because of the listing agent, right? Well, no, but I'm thinking to the people that are not. So they find out more. So, for example, just my bike, they just bought a house. Is there somewhere? It's in their promissory. Okay, promissory. That's what we'll say.
So,
Right.
you can either ask Maria, since we got six, and say, in what section?
Yeah, I want to be able to know.
What section is that?
Yeah, but like, what letter is it? You know, like.
It's just like the sales contract in different sections. But you say that's one of the sections. So you can ask them.
But there's nothing like record, public, nothing. Because you know what I noticed, and I didn't know, on the RPR. It shows you what kind of loan, how much they bought the house, and so that's a good thing. I mean, even if I don't know what I'm going to find every single person to ask them. Oh, but at least I'm able to see, you know, if they own a little bit. Yeah. Most of the people. Already under 1%. The next one, right?
Somebody else is seeing.
Yeah, right. I don't have it.
Some people.
I don't know. Yeah. So I have in your Excel, I'm like, I didn't know if I had it. Right. Oh, okay, yeah, you'll have to check on it. But I would ask Maria, because she would know. I would ask. Can I steal your PowerPoint from everyone?
Oh, wait.
Save it as a PDF.
No. But, we're gonna try to, so we're gonna go to the, maybe that is related to, so we're gonna try to go over it for you.
So that's what we're all just kind of inside.
Still liable for.
So, you know.
You check that one.
Yeah. It's,
Oh, well, that's why I said, let's go there. Bailey was like, let's go do.
I'm stopping it now.
So